Good evening to all. It's my pleasure to welcome the President of Indian Psychiatric Society South Zone, Dr. K. Ramakrishnan, sir, the General Secretary of IPS South Zone, Dr. G. Suresh Kumar, the Vice President of IPS South Zone, Dr. Ramanan Irad, the Honorary Treasurer of IPS South Zone, Dr. K. Gangaram, the Honorary Editor of IPS South Zone, Dr. Shagul Amin, and the rest of the CME committee of Dr. Lokeshwar Reddy, Dr. Sai Krishna, and other members of the CME committees, and all the rest of the EC members of the IPS South Zone. I welcome wholeheartedly for today's webinar of the WISER program, of the second program of the IPS South Zone December month 2020 webinar. I am also overwhelmed to welcome today's chairperson of the WISER program, Dr. T.P. Sudhakar, who is a senior psychiatrist, professor of Apollo Medical College, Chittoor district. Dr. T.P. Sudhakar is a past president of IPS South Zone 2017-18, and he is a person of a versatile teacher with an experience of more than 35 years in the field of psychiatry and has guided more than 30 dissertations. He is also a member in the various psychiatric association of zonal, national, and international and psychiatric organizations. And I welcome you, sir, Dr. T.P. Sudhakar, sir. I am extremely happy to welcome today's speaker, Dr. M. Suresh Kumar, sir, a senior psychiatrist and the director of SciMed Hospital, Chennai. I welcome you, sir, Dr. Suresh Kumar, sir. I also welcome our the young enthusiastic speaker of today's WISER program, Dr. Raman, who is a professor of psychiatry, Savita Medical College for the WISER program. Dr. Raman, I welcome you. I also extend my welcome to all the delegates of today's webinar lecture. The participants' e-certificate will be given for those who have registered for the IPS South Zone CME December 2020 webinar. So with this short welcome, I just hand over the mic to the president of South Zone to give his presidential remarks. Dr. Ramakrishnan, sir.
Thank you, Dr. Aravind, our young dynamic CME chairperson. Thank you for giving this opportunity. And I'm very glad we have taken up this WISER program very fast. Last month itself, as soon as the office assumed office, we started the program with the Professor Gangadhar's inaugural speech, and now is the second one. And it is heartening, in spite of 4 meetings are at present going on, but still 420 people have joined. So that itself is a credit goes to the speakers, not to us, but to the speakers, how valuable the speakers are. That goes to this. And the very purpose of our WISER program is to encourage young psychiatrists to come up and showcase their talent. So in that way, this program, we have got a very senior psychiatrist, Dr. M. Suresh Kumar. We need not tell so many things. You have heard about hypnotism, you have heard about mesmerism. Have you heard anyone talking and mesmerizing you? That is Dr. Suresh Kumar. This I have been hearing from 1992. For the past 28 years, our hearing his songs in music through his lecture. That's what I would honestly say. It is not an overwhelming one. If you say anything latest, he is updated. He is actually an artificial intelligence. You can go to his to our IPS Tamil Nadu website to YouTube lecture what he gave in the Pandi Tansaikon about artificial intelligence and VR. It is again a mesmerizing one. You cannot imagine such a interesting topic talk on AI like that. So we are proud to have you, sir. You have all along been supporting us, and you request you to continue to do so in the following years. And next year, Dr. T.P. Sudhakar and Dr. Suresh Kumar again are joining in our RCBC inauguration, Research Capacity Building program inauguration on 27th morning, 11 o'clock. Again, wherever we go, we will take with you, sir, and you kindly guide us. And I'm happy that Dr. Raman, young psychiatrist and professor of psychiatry in Savita Medical College, has chosen a good topic about glutamate in depression. People talk about glutamate in schizophrenia. So this is what our WISER program is all about. And we need not tell about Dr. T.P. Sudhakar. He was always a mentor, encourager for young generation. And we continue. We request you to continue to guide us, sir. With these few words, I request you to take over the session, and the chair is with you, sir. Welcome, Dr. Sudhakar, sir.
Thank you, sir. Our President, Dr. Ramakrishnan, sir, CME Chair, Dr. V.K. Aravind, and his co-chair, Dr. Lokeshwar Reddy, I could see him, and other members of the CME committee. It's really a very big honor to me to preside over the very next meeting after which, when we had the last meeting last month, when we had honored one of our esteemed members, Dr. Gangadhar. And the very next meeting, I am chairing the session. That itself is a honor. That too, when Dr. Suresh Kumar and another eminent young speaker, Dr. K. Raman, are participating in this particular meet. I'm really honored. Thank you, Dr. Aravind and President, sir, for this honor. We will straight away go into the topic. Today, our program is, we have got 2 lectures. One is about the role of glutamate in depression by Professor K. Raman of Savita Medical College. And of course, the other one is on treatment-resistant depression by Dr. M. Suresh Kumar, about whom I need not really introduce. But it is such a stimulating topics which have been chosen by our chairperson for this evening. And as you all know that we had been treating depression for times immemorial. And at some point of time, probably the basic theory was monoamine theories. And we had monoamine inhibitors to start with. Then we switched over to tricyclics. Then we are going through the period of SSRIs, wherein we think that by altering the monoaminergic transmission, we can treat most of the affective disorders. But despite our efforts with all these new molecules that's in the field right now, we are not fully satisfied. That's why Dr. Suresh Kumar is going to talk about the treatment resistance. That means there is still certain cases wherein the available antidepressants are not sufficient to treat. So that means something else is underlying, whatever may be the etiology of depression. And our focus immediately shifted to glutamate, because as you know, maybe glutamate and glycine, they are almost like twin brothers, and most of the NMDA receptors, they act together whenever these 2 substances are there acting on that particular receptor. And our main focus is how glutamine could probably affect depressive patients. The various mechanisms have been suggested, and the very example we came to know rather in late 2000s is about ketamine. Ketamine is a very staunch NMDA antagonist, and people came to know that ketamine is quite effective and very immediately effective, unlike the routine antidepressants which we are dealing with in treating the depression. This really was a breakthrough, because till that time we had other NMDA antagonists like memantine. Memantine really doesn't act that effectively as ketamine. So we think that the very glutamate metabolism itself in the brain is quite tricky. Unless we know the underlying mechanisms, probably we can't understand how glutamate could be very relevant in treating a depression. Probably initially Dr. Kumar, which were there in the market early in 90s. And actually these 2 drugs are not reuptake inhibitors of serotonin or norepinephrine. They are in fact enhancers of reuptake. Despite that, they were proven to be quite effective. And now the theory says probably its action is basically based on again NMDA receptors. So again, probably this tianeptine is going to come back into the market in a big way as an NMDA antagonist, as an antidepressant. And only problem with tianeptine, probably some of us have experienced, is they have got some abuse potential. Again, Dr. Suresh Kumar is the right person to talk about this abuse potential, whatever it has got. So without standing between you and the speakers, I will first switch over to the first speaker who will be talking about the glutamate role in depressive illness and maybe some of the glutamate related drugs which modify the glutamate metabolism in depression, Professor K. Raman. He is a young man. He is MBBS from Madurai Medical College. He did MD Psychiatry from Kasturba Medical College, Manipal. He has got a postdoctoral fellowship in Child and Adolescent Psychiatry, CMC Vellore. And currently he is Professor, Savita Medical College and Hospital, Chennai. His achievements are, he had got a travel fellowship award for WPA meeting in 2010 as a young psychiatrist. He had got a Best Poster Award in Tamil Nadu Psychon in 2015. He has achieved a Nilofer Award for Early Intervention Autism in Indian Association of Child and Adolescent Mental Health Conference in 2016. His main areas of interest is, of course, like me, he is interested in postgraduate training. Of course, from this CV, you can decipher that his main area of interest is probably child and adolescent psychiatry and all problems related to childhood and adolescence. With the short introduction first, we will go over to Dr. K. Raman for his deliberations on glutamate metabolism in depressive patients. Probably based on that background, Dr. Suresh Kumar may be elaborating on treatment-resistant depression. Over to you, Professor K. Raman.
Yes, sir. Sir, is my screen visible?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. Sure, sir. And thank you so much, sir. At the outset, I would really like to thank IPS President, South Zone President, Dr. Ramakrishnan, sir, and CME committee members, Dr. Aravind, sir, and Dr. Shanti Nambi, ma'am, for giving me this opportunity. With due respect to the chairperson and the speaker, Dr. Suresh, sir, I would like to proceed. It's really indeed a honor to present in front of all senior psychiatrists. So I feel extremely privileged to do this topic. Like some audio disturbance was there. Okay. So the topic that is that I've chosen to present for the today's CME is focus of glutamate in depression. So this is the outline that I would just present in. Like I'll just give you a brief background of why we started focusing on glutamate and the basics about glutamatergic system, which is extremely essential to understand the receptor mechanism, and possible evidence for glutamate dysfunction in major depressive disorder. I'm not going to go into details of all the drugs, but I'm just going to give a way for just introducing some of the glutamate targets and for depression. So as the chairperson rightly pointed out, our knowledge about etiology of major depressive disorder has evolved over decades. So we started with understanding of monoamine deficiency, and that was a major theory of depression a few decades back. Then we actually expanded our understanding to actually cortical and limbic pathology, where there was involvement of prefrontal cortex, amygdala, and hippocampus. And we started later understanding that there are definite structural and cellular level abnormalities in major depressive disorder. And there is definitely a possibility for neurotoxicity role in hippocampus in major depressive disorder. So when we talk about neurotoxicity, of course, the first neurotransmitter that comes into our mind for excitotoxicity is glutamate. So again, when we understand like major depressive disorder, antidepressants have been in existence for a longer duration, but still there are certain unmet needs for the antidepressants. That's why we have started shifting on other areas of targets or neurotransmitter targets for depression treatment. So if you just look at a very recent meta-analysis and systematic review on head-to-head trials of various antidepressants, still the study's results were really astounding to see that like most of the major antidepressants have difficulty, they had less efficacy, as well as their tolerability was like questionable. So that comes to a question of like, even on many randomized control trials when it was done, like when a meta-analysis of studies were done, we found out that the placebo response was at least 30%, 30 to 35%, like uniformly, which questions the efficacy of antidepressants per se. So that just points out to that limited specific efficacy of the antidepressants. Like probably there is just a 20% advantage over placebo. So where are we now, like with regard to the specific antidepressants? That's the reason why antidepressants are being marketed with various receptor targets. We also know that they produce a lot of side effects, and most important symptoms are still not addressed with the currently existing antidepressants, particularly lethargy, anhedonia. We really need to pick up antidepressants, and polypharmacy has become a norm in starting with like certain cases like where there is severe depression. So we all know that like antidepressants have a relatively slow onset of action, which at least takes 2 to 4 weeks for the therapeutic action to start. So which again points to the need for onset of action much earlier. So hence the target for glutamate came into picture. So we all know that the study trial results were like again pointed out, like when the remission rate with first used antidepressant was around 36.8%, which gradually dropped at the when we started using the fourth antidepressant, it came down to 10.8%. So this is the reason why actually there is a new target for antidepressant action is essential. Thus came into existence glutamate. So why focus on glutamate? So glutamate is the most potent excitatory neurotransmitter available in the brain. Compared to the monoamines, which are available in millimole, glutamate available or concentration in brain is like 5 to 15. Monoamines are available only in micromole concentration, whereas glutamate is available in millimole concentration, which is around 5 to 15 millimole per kg. So such is the amount of concentration of glutamate available in the brain. So definitely it has a significant role on various aspects of the brain function. So one of the most important role that we are all aware of is like synaptic plasticity, learning and memory. So when we learned about synaptic plasticity, we must have heard about this long-term potentiation and long-term depression, which plays a vital role in synaptic potentiation. So there is a huge research available with regard to glutamate involvement in neuropsychiatric neurological disorders such as amyotrophic lateral sclerosis, like for which riluzole is the drug of choice, like which has been identified as a glutamate antagonist. So although these research exist like in evidence, when it comes to psychiatric disorders, like still an understanding of glutamate is lacking, particularly with the focus more was on schizophrenia. Slowly we have started actually focusing on the role of glutamate in not only depression, but also in anxiety disorders, particularly PTSD, OCD. Recently, I think we had a talk from NIMHANS, like where they just talked about like the role of memantine in treatment-resistant OCD. So such is the implication, wider implication of glutamate that we are looking at. As Sir said, like it is as complex as our human brain, glutamate neurotransmitter itself, because in view of its action on various receptors, understanding glutamate receptor itself can be a CME lecture of its. But major
Some trouble.
Yes, sir.
Can you request whoever is managing to mute everybody.
Sure.
Rajesh, I think you can mute everyone, Rajesh.
Yes, sir, I have done.
Yeah, you can mute it, okay? Because some people are coming in the speaker link. I don't know how they got this link. So this is not a common link to be then. Okay, Dr. Raman, you please continue, Dr. Raman.
Sure, sir. But the major compelling evidence for the role of glutamate in depression came after ketamine's efficacy was established. And also there is a lot of link between the role. There is a lot of link established between antidepressant effect, because it said that the delayed effect of antidepressant, although the acute effect of antidepressant is to increase the substrates, monoamine substrate, whereas the delayed effect was actually possibly mediated through glutamate. That's the reason for delay in effect. So before we understand the glutamate signaling between the neurons, it is important to know the glutamatergic system. So when we talk about glutamatergic system, like we always talk about tripartite glutamate synapse, which is like presynaptic neuron, postsynaptic neuron, and the glial cells. This constitutes a glutamate synapse. So which is always tripartite, whereas in most of the cases we would have not had an involvement of the glial cells, which is very important in the role of neurotoxicity and synaptic plasticity. There are two important types of glutamate receptors. One is like ion channel receptors, which are called as ionotropic receptors. The other one is metabotropic receptors, which are G protein coupled receptors, which are almost similar to dopamine, norepinephrine, and serotonin. This is a classification of glutamate receptors. As I told you, it's into ionotropic and metabotropic. These ionotropic receptors are further classified into NMDA and AMPA and kainate receptors, whereas metabotropic receptors are classified further down into group 1, group 2, and group 3. Based on the subunits, they can be further classified. The most important modulator that is required in terms of antidepressant efficacy is M-glutamate R2 and R3 group. This group is extremely focused on target for antidepressant action. These are the subunits for each receptors. I'm not going to details, but like NMDA receptor has receptor 1 and receptor 2 with subunits of A to D and receptor 3 of A to B. So similarly, AMPA has 4 receptors like subunits from R1 to R4. So as I told you, metabotropic glutamate receptors are further classified into group 1, group 2, and group 3. Group 1 are primarily excitatory, like they actually activate adenyl cyclase and protein kinase C, whereas group 2 and group 3 are primarily inhibitory in nature. This is an important picture that we need to understand for the glutamate signaling between the neurons. So this will summarize the like the glutamate metabolism. So if you just see that, and this is a presynaptic neuron, this is a postsynaptic neuron, these are all glial cells. So if you just see that, like the source of glutamate is not just purely from glutamine, they are also metabolized from, they are also produced from the alpha ketoglutarate and pyruvate from the KCA cycle. So this is not the only source. Glutamine is not the only source for glutamate. So glutamine is converted into glutamate in the presynaptic neuron by the enzyme glutaminase. So this glutamate, which is actually further encompassed into the synaptic vesicle with the use of, this is a very important transporter protein, which is called as vesicular glutamate transporter protein, which helps in packaging of the glutamate into the synaptic vesicles. These synaptic vesicles, by association with this membrane, presynaptic membrane, through the SNAR complex. This is again a protein which is essential for regulating the presynaptic membrane. By association of these vesicles with through the SNAR complex, when the calcium exocytosis happens, these synaptic vesicles release glutamate into the synaptic cleft. The synaptic, once it is released into the synaptic cleft, they actually glutamate get their activation. Glutamate mediate their action through their glutamate receptors, which are available on the postsynaptic membrane. You can see NMDA receptors, you can see AMPA receptors, you can see kainate receptors. So they mediate their action through the receptors. Okay. So once the glutamate gets attached to the postsynaptic membrane, there are certain proteins on the postsynaptic membrane which are called as postsynaptic. So So there are postsynaptic membrane proteins, which are called as postsynaptic density proteins, which are attached to the postsynaptic membrane. They help in mediating regulation of the receptors. So once the glutamate executes action through the receptors, there is increase of BDNF release, and which helps in further activation of intracellular cascade mechanisms and results in synaptic plasticity. Once this response is done, the excess glutamate that is in the synaptic cleft is actually removed through very important transporter, which is called as EAAT, that is excitatory amino acid transporter. So this is extremely important because these are all important channels for antidepressant target. So excitatory amino acid transporter, what it does is it removes the excess glutamate from the synaptic cleft back into the glial cell, where the glutamate is converted into glutamine by glutamine synthetase, and which is taken back into the presynaptic neuron. This completes the metabolism of glutamate. If you just look at the same glutamate signaling, depending upon the receptor, basically what happens is NMDA receptor and AMPA receptor, NMDA receptor primarily conducts through calcium channel, whereas AMPA receptor primarily conducts like depolarization through sodium channel influx. So once this channel influx happens, this results in activation of the BDNF release, and further synaptogenesis happens. So you can see that like these are all kinase receptors, NMDA receptors, AMPA receptors, whereas metabotropic glutamate receptors, like I told you, metabotropic receptors are G protein coupled receptors, are available both on the presynaptic neuron as well as on the postsynaptic neuron, whereas you could see that NMDA and AMPA receptors are predominantly on the postsynaptic membrane. So just to give you a brief overview about each receptor, I'm not going to elaborate because like it's going to take much of the time. So the NMDA receptor is extremely structurally complex. If you just look at this, this is the NMDA receptor, which is a tetrameric complex. This is a receptor 1 subunit, 2 receptor one subunit. This is receptor 2 subunits, which are 2. This is a primarily glycine binding site, and this is basically glutamate binding site, receptor 2A and 2B. So NMDA receptor activation happens only if both glutamine and glycine combines together. NMDA receptor activation cannot happen with just glutamate activation or glutamate receptor with just the glutamate presence. So it has to have a glycine presence. That's why glycine is called as an obligate co-agonist for presence of activation of glutamate receptor, which is NMDA. At resting membrane potential, magnesium actually blocks the influx of calcium. Once the membrane gets partially depolarized, it allows the influx of calcium, which leads to further intracellular cascade activation. So the most important point is like NMDA receptor in moderate level. This is one receptor which is have to be focused because like it focuses on like maintaining optimum level. So when there is NMDA receptor moderate activation, it leads to synaptogenesis. When there is excessive NMDA receptor activation, it results in excessive calcium release, which can result in apoptotic processes or cell death. So this is again the same receptor, like just to give a brief idea of like there are different sites for binding for glutamate and glycine. So there have been reports of like altered NMDA binding and expression in individuals with major depressive disorder. So in major depressive disorder, it's not like each receptor malfunction has been identified from various studies. So the most important finding that they have found out is also decreased transcription of excitatory amino acid transporter. I told you this transporter is extremely important for removal of the excess glutamate from the synaptic cleft. So all these have been identified as abnormalities in major depressive disorder. Coming to AMPA and kinase receptors, they are non-NMDA receptor. The most important function of AMPA receptors are they mediate the fast excitatory neurotransmission, whereas NMDA receptor mediates slow excitatory neurotransmission. So it is said that like AMPA and kinase receptors get activated in less than a millisecond, and they get desensitized also very faster, whereas NMDA receptor takes a very slow time to actually get activated, and their desensitization also takes a longer process. That is why they are responsible for slow excitatory neurotransmission, whereas AMPA is responsible for fast excitatory neurotransmission. Kinase receptors are present both on the presynaptic and postsynaptic neurons, but like they are predominantly presynaptic, they are predominantly present on the presynaptic neuron. These are metabotrophic receptors. Like metabotrophic receptors primarily act via the G proteins, like rather than the cation channels, which are for the inotropic receptors. This is just the key features of metabotrophic glutamate receptors. They are classified into three, as I told you. Group 1 is for like activation of phospholipase, and group 2 and group 3 are for inhibition of adenyl cyclase. The most important is like they are present on the presynaptic and postsynaptic receptors. So the modulation of, they can actually affect both glutamate release from the presynaptic neuron as well as like activation of the receptors on the postsynaptic neuron. So that is why this is a major area of modulation for antidepressant therapeutic action. This is extremely important. That's why, because like there have been new targets on excitatory amino acid transporter enhancer, which is ceftriaxone, which is an antibiotic, ceftriaxone. This has been found to be also effective in that to produce antidepressant action. So there are studies which have been found that like decreased expression of EAATs have been found to be present in mood disorders, whereas increased expression of these transporters have been found to produce antidepressant-like effects. So we all know that like lamotrigine modulates glutamate transmission. So they have found that like actually one of the most important mood stabilizing property of lamotrigine therapeutic action is mediated via upregulating this particular transporter activity. So that's why we are giving them as a drug of the therapeutic choice in bipolar depression. So these are all the various types of EAATs. Again, like each one is distributed at different places. One can be specific for glutamate and aspartate, and other can be for glutamate. So like that, we have 5 different subtypes. Vesicular glutamate transporters, these are very important because, like I told you, in the presynaptic neuron, the glutamate is stored in the synaptic vesicles, which is actually through the process of the transporters. Again, decreased glutamate mRNA expression has been identified in patients with MDD, major depressive disorder. So this is again an important area which can be identified for therapeutic action. The postsynaptic density proteins, this is extremely important for regulating receptor activation. So like I saw is presynaptic, like you have what is called a SNAR protein complex. We have on the postsynaptic membrane, you have what is called as postsynaptic density proteins. There are different types of proteins, but what is more specific for NMDA receptor activation is PSD95 and SAP102. So these levels also have been affected in patients with like depressive disorder. The glial cells, like without glial cell, the synapse of tripartite glutamate is incomplete. So glial cells plays a vital role in metabolizing glutamate to glutamate. Then they also synthesize and release the NMDA receptor co-agonist D-serine. They play a vital role in clearing glutamate from the synaptic. The excessive glutamate, if it is there, then they are going to more that glutamate and the more severe the excitotoxicity. So they are going to play a vital role in removing the excessive glutamate from the synaptic cleft through their EAAT that's the transporters. So there is a lot of literature available on the role of glial cells, astrocyte dysfunction. We have even looked at the morphology of the astrocytes, which has been found to be defective in patients with depressive disorder. So to summarize the role of glutamate in psychiatry, of course, like there are, as I just started, like you can have anything related to schizophrenia, depression, bipolar disorder, post-traumatic stress disorder. So the expansion of glutamate role in psychiatry is expanding. So that is why we have just started focusing on, apart from schizophrenia, we're just looking at other disorders and targets for glutamate. Now, there is the evidence for glutamate dysfunction in mood disorders. So the most compelling evidence is from ketamine studies. So like we all know that ketamine is an NMDA receptor antagonist. So many people get confused because like NMDA receptor is not equivalent to glutamate. So it's a receptor where the glutamate gets bounded to. So that is where the confusion comes in understanding the role of or antidepressant effect of ketamine. So NMDA receptor antagonist, but it potentiates AMPA receptor mechanism. So basically we should because the fast excitatory transmission is through the AMPA receptor. Just now I said that like AMPA receptor is responsible for fast excitatory neurotransmission, which further regulates BDNF release and which further regulates the synaptic plasticity. So this faster action of ketamine is because of this AMPA receptor potentiation, because the NMDA receptor is blocked, so glutamate gets bounded to the AMPA receptor. This is the most compelling evidence that we have for any other psychiatric disorders. Most of the studies come from the psychotropic drugs. So similarly, we started having the compelling evidence from ketamine. So we also know that there are certain drugs which are going to inhibit the glutamate release. Some of them are riluzole. As I told you, it was indicated in amyotrophic lateral sclerosis. This lamotrigine, they have demonstrated antidepressant property. Although memantine, as sir was saying, memantine has been tried because of this. This is also an NMDA receptor antagonist, but like efficacy wise, like they are not been proven yet. So memantine studies have not been proven in terms of like antidepressant property. The other ways where they found out evidence for glutamate dysfunction in depression or major depressive disorder is they have found that like abnormally elevated levels were found in depressive patients, which was primarily through magnetic resonance spectroscopic studies. And most of the studies were from animal models or postmortem studies, or like, of course, like clinical studies and human studies have started already. And there are a lot of evidence available in the literature. So there is a significant role of association between glutamate, stress and depression. So if you just look at like how stress mediates, like stress actually increases like associated with increased release of glutamate. So they can have an acute stress which is mediated through which can be mediated through the neurons which are projected to the prefrontal cortex, whereas the chronic stress is where like glutamate comes into picture. It results in increased release of glutamate. It has altered clearing of glutamate from the synapse. That means like there is going to be more glutamate in the synaptic cleft, which is going to cause like cell death and reduce glutamine cycling and glial cell density. These are all produced by like chronic stress effects. So you could just see this like chronic stress actually decreases glutamate synapse number and function. These are all the postsynaptic density proteins, the vesicular glutamate transporter. All these are impacted by chronic stress. So if acute stress doesn't actually mediate through the glutamate receptor function. So you could see here, ketamine actually produces glutamate burst and glutamate synaptic plasticity, whereas stress and cortisol decreases BDNF. So very, very important is like chronic stress actually plays a vital role in actually mediating effects in depression through glutamic neurotransmission. One of the most consistent findings that have been demonstrated in imaging finding is like the elevated glutamate levels like have been found in occipital cortex, and decreased level has been demonstrated in dorsolateral prefrontal cortex and anterior cingulate cortex. This is one of the most important finding through magnetic resonance spectroscopy. Of course, like as I just said in the beginning, like antidepressant effect, the acute effect of antidepressants may be to focus on increasing the monoamine substrate, whereas the chronic effect, there are a lot of studies which are focused that the delay in onset of action could be mediated through glutamine. So lot of studies which are focused on like how antidepressants are going to affect the glutamate function. So one of the ways is they reduce glutamate release and synaptic transmission. Some of the antidepressant effect have been mediated through reducing glutamate release and synaptic transmission. They have been found to prevent the stress-induced enhancement of glutamate release. These are all some of the ways, and some of them can actually alter the expression of mRNA that codes for NMDA receptor subunits. So again, like how we just learned for ketamine, which is one of the rapidly acting antidepressants. So the antidepressants which are supposed to mediate through glutamate should reduce NMDA receptor function but potentiate AMPA function. So if you just look at here, the typical monoamine antidepressants, they increase monoamines, but the BDNF expression, but they don't affect the release. Whereas the major difference between rapidly acting antidepressants and the monoamine antidepressant is rapidly acting antidepressants through AMPA receptor activation produces a glutamate burst, and then increases BDNF release directly. It doesn't just affect the expression of the BDNF alone, whereas it actually increases the BDNF release and improves the synaptogenesis. That's why the faster onset of action for rapidly acting antidepressants. These are all some of the sites that have been looked at for glutamate targets. One of the first important site is the antidepressant should target presynaptic release of glutamate, the first one. The second one in the receptor level, postsynaptic receptors. The third one is the metabotropic glutamate receptors. As I was repeatedly saying, like it must be either 2 or 3, and there are studies on 4 or the 1 and 5. And the last one is the EA80, the transporter. So these are all some of the 4 major targets for antidepressant therapeutic efficacy, which have to be mediated via glutamate. Of course, some of them just to complete the other evidence, I just wanted to highlight that there are a lot of animal models which have highlighted the importance of glutamate in depression. One of the most important, many studies have been done in rats, mice, and all those things. Like we could see that the vesicular glutamate transporter decreased expression have been found repeatedly, and involvement of metabotropic glutamate 3 receptor decreased expression have been found in animal models. Postmortem studies have contributed to the evidence for depressive disorders. So you could see that predominantly they have just noticed NMDA receptor 2A, there is not much of evidence for NMDA receptor 1 subunit, whereas there is a lot of evidence for NMDA receptor 2A and 2B. This decreased expression have been found in patients with major depressive disorder in postmortem studies. Whereas when it comes to imaging, you could just see that magnetic resonance spectroscopy focus on they were not able to just measure only glutamate alone, because it's always glutamine plus glutamate. So that's why it's GLX points to glutamate plus glutamine. So there was a decreased glutamine level in the major depressive disorder in prefrontal cortex and anterior cingulate cortex, so the major study that has been found is decreased glutamate level in the anterior cingulate cortex. When it comes to PET imaging, they found out that there is decreased activation of metabotropic glutamate receptor 5 in anterior cingulate cortex, orbitofrontal cortex, amygdala, and hippocampus. So some of the imaging studies have also found out that there is a decreased glutamate release or glutamate levels of glutamate in these anterior cingulate cortex. Whereas blood levels in the plasma have been measured, and the meta-analysis of some 12 association studies between blood glutamate level and MDD has clearly pointed out that blood glutamate levels in depression is high. This is what has been found out through blood levels or plasma levels of glutamate. So the most convincing evidence is through ketamine. So understanding ketamine mechanism of action is extremely important. One is through the NMDA receptor blockade, as that is the most important mechanism, NMDA receptor antagonist or NMDA receptor blockade, which increases glutamate release and it causes activation of. So once the glutamate is released in the synaptic cleft, it causes activation of the AMPA receptors, so which is responsible for the fast excitatory neurotransmission and which increases the BDNF release, and BDNF binds to related kinase receptor, and there is an intracellular signaling pathway which is called as mTAR, which is again very important when you have to understand glutamate related therapeutic effect. There is another mechanism of action which is also contributed to the ketamine effect through blockade of GABAergic inhibition, so which disinhibits the glutamate release, which leads to surge of glutamate release, and of course further release is through further action is through the AMPA receptor activation. So this is one of the this is one of the picture which is very interesting to note that with the dendritic spine arborization, you could see that with chronic stress where there is decreased, and with chronic stress and ketamine, how ketamine could just increase the dendritic arborization. So that comes to the understanding of where all and what all have been done for glutamate targeted interventions. I have not got enough evidence based for all the individual drugs, but I just thought I will just summarize some of the targeted interventions. NMDA receptor antagonists, like just now we just learned, one of the most evident drug that has been studied repeatedly. You know that esketamine is FDA approved in 2019 as intranasal spray. So ketamine and long-term maintenance studies of ketamine is also available. So then comes memantine. Of course, the efficacy has not been very clearly established. Zinc and magnesium are, because they are addressing membrane potential, their blockage is essential for NMDA receptor functioning. There can be positive modulators, because just now we learned ketamine actually potentiates the AMPA receptor, which is responsible for the fast excitatory neurotransmission. I was talking about EAA2 enhancer. There are a lot of studies that are pending to understand this mechanism much in detail. There is an NMDA receptor modulator, which is minocycline, and the other NMDA inhibitor, antagonist of NMDA, AMPA, and potentiator of glutamate reuptake is riluzole. Riluzole has studies have also been found to have some effect, but continuous efficacy studies have not been reported. So if you look at the other important targeted intervention is like the drug target is these cycloserine. We know that like glycine is a co-agonist with the glutamate. So the glycine site of NMDA modulation has been targeted through D-cycloserine. The others have been dextrometamorphin, because that also acts through NMDA antagonism. Quinidine combination is under development. These are all some of the studies. Some of them are under phase 2 and phase 3 trials, but like efficacy has been proven consistently for ketamine and esketamine. So to summarize, definitely there is a significant amount of role of glutamate in depression, which is very well established from whether it's from animal models or postmortem studies or from human studies and imaging findings. And this is a very complex neurotransmitter, but the advantage of it is like targets can be focused on individual receptor and subunit modulation. And definitely there is a huge scope for rapidly acting antidepressants. So one of the most important pioneer for that is ketamine, but like there are a lot more to actually come. With that, I would like to actually end my talk. Thank you so much for your patient listening, sir.
Thank you very much, Dr. Thank you very much, Dr. Raman.
Thank you, sir.
For your elaborate presentation on glutamate, metabolism as such, and its role possibly in various depressive illnesses. There is no denial that we have to move above monoaminotic transmission in depression, because as you rightly said, ketamine is one evidence. Maybe there are other pointers also that monoamines not alone are responsible for depression, because we see various types of depressions. We see agitated depressions. We see depressions in stupor also. Maybe again here, various glutaminergic transmission plays a role. Maybe in some of the agitated depressions, it may be glutaminergic excess. Maybe in retarded depressions, it may be lesser levels of glutamate. Maybe the various receptors, not only the receptors, for that matter, glutamate, even within the neurons also, it can just transmit. So that is another problem with glutamate. Probably one of the most ill understood neurotransmitter as far as we stand today is glutamate. Maybe. That's why so much of confusion is there. Anyway, definitely time will solve. The progress had been very rapid. As you rightly said, some of the NMDA antagonists, they don't act as antidepressants, whereas ketamine acts maybe by a different mechanism. You are true. That's right, probably. And probably Dr. Raman will be able to answer, because you are constantly answering most of the questions, yes, because it's related to glutamate.
Please.
Glutamate role in depression as compared with schizophrenia. This question is from Dr. Lalita of Visakhapatnam.
Yeah. So glutamate dysfunction in schizophrenia is a well-established entity. So, but like glutamate role in depression is like how we are looking at like emerging field. So that's why the focus of like it all started after ketamine was discovered. So otherwise, like the glutamate would not have been actually talked about in this much intensity with regard to research in like major depressive disorder. So major thing like started with regard to only ketamine. And then like definitely there are new targets which are being investigated. So one of them is rapastinel, which is another drug which is, although like many RCTs doesn't talk about efficacy. So that's also a glycine modulator drug. So it's a partial agonist like D-cycloserine. So there is a lot of research, like as I pointed out, great research on glutamate. So there is a literature review on in 2020 in drug. I just wanted to smell the expert opinion on therapeutic drugs in 2020. That's a very good, interesting literature review. It's expert opinion on therapeutic drugs 2020. All the RCTs related to glutamate-related modulation in major depressive disorder and the therapeutic targets.
Okay, sir. I think I'm clubbing next 3 questions together because they're all related to role of ketamine in treatment-resistant depression. I don't know who can answer this.
Raman should answer.
Role of ketamine in treatment.
He's the expert on it.
Yes, sir. There are a lot of RCTs like in of ketamine in treatment-resistant depression. So what has been proven is like 0.5 to ketamine in with 0.5 to 1 milligram per kg. That's the dose like advocated, and the response has been documented like as early as 40 minutes. So the only thing is like how long can we use ketamine is a big question. So like because the studies are focused on like maintenance of ketamine efficacy for at least 4 weeks. So after that, like I think like it's an individual preference, but there have been a survey in US among all the psychiatrists very recently on how frequently maintenance dose of ketamine is being done. Many people have responded to maintaining for twice a week at least, twice a week, but most of the studies have combined with oral antidepressants. So it's not that like ketamine is alone have to be used, you'll have to combine with the oral antidepressants. Esketamine intranasal spray, there are few like trials which have come up. The doses that are being used is like 56 milligram and 84 milligram. So they have recommended for how to use esketamine in MDD for induction. So what they say is like you will have to use 84 milligram for 4 weeks, first 4 weeks, like on twice weekly. After that, you can reduce it to 56 milligram once a week. So that's the maintenance dose like that they recommend for esketamine intranasal spray. With regard to tyneptine, sir, like definitely tyneptine was originally marketed with a big market with regard to focus on synaptic plasticity. One of the major therapeutic target for tyneptine was like synaptic plasticity. So definitely when synaptic plasticity and BDNF is touched upon without glutamate modulation, it cannot happen. So, but I did not know why tyneptine lost its efficacy. So that point I'm not able to understand. So, but definitely glutamate modulation has been one of the major mechanism of action for tyneptine as well.